All right, welcome everyone at the next Multi-Network Community Sync. Today is May 21st, and we have quite a few topics. I think some coming from last week, and let's go by the order. Lionel, I think there's something that we didn't make to talk about last week, so yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it was just a very short topic, just because I talked to Pooja about Gateway API and this endpoint selector gap, and it will be in provisional. I just wanted to inform the group that it will be in provisional for 1.4, 1.4, and then the idea would be to have it in 1.5 instead.
Is that a mode or what is it? State? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think, and that's SIM implementation going for only until 1.5, right?
Yeah, if I understood correctly, yes. So yeah, at that stage, I guess we could try to do some integration with Gateway API.
Hmm.
We still have some time, of course, but I think it would be good to start this activity.
All right. Yeah, good to know. Yeah, thanks for the update. Yeah. Anything else here, Lionel?
Yes, just I saw the question that if it's the cluster IP gateway issue, yes, it is, and I will try to find a link.
Okay. All right. I think I would like to continue mostly discussion we kind of had last week about the kind of slightly different mode approach for the kind of integration with DRA. And let me paste it as well into the endpoints. Just had it. So, Machine, had you had a chance to think about this? I think
Yeah,
you, at the end of the meeting, you mentioned there might be some the current approach might not have. Let me open this as well. Will that block something that you have in mind? So did you maybe come up with that example or not?
not really example. I think it was probably just a misinterpretation. My question was about the optionality versus
Mm,
mandatory attributes and the standardization of that. The reason I mentioned until we have something in place today, even in the context of assigning multiple network devices, the attribute is let's call it a free text for simplifications. You
right,
you
right.
can you can refer to whatever you would like in there, either as a string or as anything. So that was the question. Of course, in the context of multi-network, and once these attributes will be standardized and so forth, the only way to use the pod network API and the proper DRI driver will require that. It was more that if one might have a DRI driver that has uh, a different implementation, although we're talking about just the short term. So until everything is in place, now one is should block the usage of defining network devices, taking advantage of how DRA is implemented today. That's so no specific use cases. It's just to continue with the networking part and making those devices available in the node. Still, until those attributes are standardized, one could still continue with using the free text.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think so. I think I'm hearing we are aligned, and you're okay with this. Is that is
yeah, yeah.
okay?
For,
So
for, for,
and to give you more context, because I've been hearing Lionel, I'm not sure, or you have been mentioned. Maybe can we use this with example Multus, right? Uh, and to be honest with you, you still can. I think at least at this stage. Um, why I'm saying is this is because you're gonna have a pod network, and you can see there is no DRA related fields here, and this is a free text. You can do whatever here, right? Uh, in terms of the resource slice, is a standardization that the multi-network moving forward approach will standardize around the array. And I think I don't want to change that. So to I hope we are all in agreement on that. Are we okay with that? Because, but that doesn't block you from just getting the pod network and doing your own stuff with Multus, for example. That's what I'm getting at, right? Though it will not be in compliance with what we are doing here, and that might be just from your side a temporary thing because you want to experiment, because you want to move faster, and that's fine. But I think effort of this community, of this multi-network community, will be to align with the array. And then the gap that I think that will be the first thing, the gap that Lionel is working with Pooja eventually will be aligning with this pod network and the model that we are planning to do here as the official thing. All right. And then as the recommended way to do this. It still will not block you to have your own standardization, because you're gonna have, because amazingly, when you think about this, it all boils down to the implementations, right? And they kind of leverage all the things around. And if you want to kind of come up with your own pod annotations, because keep in mind, the array, the main reason we are going to the array, you will have this ability to just use the spec, right? It doesn't prevent you from just still using the annotation. That's what I'm trying to get here. You can have a pod network, leverage Multus, have your own implementation around that, still leverage annotations, then the gateway API still do kind of align with whatever you have there, and come up with your own thing. But the community here, we would like to standardize around the array, and this is the contact points of that standardizations, right? So, and then moving forward on the gateway API side, we definitely want to just add a reference to this pod network in one form or the other. And then from there, basically the endpoint slice, a form of an endpoint slice implementation that's gonna be understanding the whole thing as the recommended way to do things. Is that what does that feels right, Machine? And Lionel?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe Lionel would like to add something. Just prior to that, just a side note. I was looking at the Resource Slice API, and it looks like they are proposing a new V1 Beta 2, whereby the so-called basic and their devices, which is of course the holder of attributes, will move one level up, and then they will try to introduce something else. Let me put at least what I managed to read little bit, not fully. I have to go through all this about the different proposal due to some ongoing DRI caps, among them, of course, the partitionable devices, but there are others.
Okay, sounds good. But I think what I would like to kind of close here is that we are saying that this is the view of the API that we are going to propose of the pod network, and I'm going to close the doc, and I will ask everyone to sign off on that doc. But basically, just want to preempt that this will be the view of the doc where config will be an opaque text, right? This, I think, in my version, this is just a parameters. There is no nesting here unnecessary, so there is no opaque. It's just parameters and then the whole clear text, and then enabled and provider fields. And then the other contact points will be the attribute has to have initially at the initial form what I'm going to propose. This will not be Kubernetes IO. It will be driver name, and you have your driver name attribute must provide a pod network value, because right now I don't think we can with nothing go to the DRA and ask about the standardized name yet. We need to have this first, chicken and egg issue kind of. So let's have let's have something initially, And in the future we and in the text I will call it out, right? That for now we are going to require just the driver domain and the pod network field to be provided. But with keeping in mind that we would like to go to the array and have a, I think, Gaurav, this is called standardized name or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So eventually we want to kind of call out that we want to convert this to a standardized name. Gaurav, is that right? Is the standardized names will have some some domain at the beginning, like Kubernetes.io, or they just full names and that's it?
No, they will need a specific domain. You cannot just skip it, because if you skip it, it kind of assumes the default driver's name as the prefix. So skipping any domain has a different meaning to it. So you definitely need something.
Okay. But the standardized, you know how the standardized looks like?
I mean, I have sent out a PR and I've defined it as kh.io exactly like this. So
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Because I was wondering. All right. Yeah. So this is what I'm gonna call out in the text, that for now we don't want to standardize. I will just call out that in the future we will, when this gonna become, when pod network is gonna get approved, then we're gonna push to the array to have the standardized name as a pod network. And the kind of contact points are for now the resource slice attribute for the device that it responds to, and then the status in the data, you have to have the same value as well. I think this will be more in details in the doc, so we can read more on that, but high level, those are the two contact points I'm calling out. Any comments on that?
I had one question, Maciej. So you're saying initially we don't want to propose a well-defined name for this particular attribute, right?
No, the well-defined will be just the key, right? The pod network will
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
well-defined, but
So,
only that.
okay, yes, just the key would be well-defined.
Uh-huh.
So, but in that proposal as well, are we also including how things like the endpoint slice selector will work? And if yes, then how?
I don't want to go there.
Okay,
Not yet. I know you would. Everyone is kind of eager to let's do the whole thing at once. Let's scope
okay.
it, because we are not gonna move anywhere. Let's get the very basic thing first. I know this feels very simple and basic, and what's not. We cannot get that in yet. So let's have that.
Okay.
Yes, I know, Gaurav, and basically this is where we need to get the gap from Puja, and the one that Lionel is looking at as well. Get that in, because that's the first step. So basically the gap that Puja is working on is just to introduce cluster IP, by the way, just so that everyone is aware. That gap is only about replacing having an option to replace service cluster IP. That's it. There is a notion and mentioning in the goals of that action is to, in the future, to support multi-network, but the gap itself does not touch multi-network at all. Be wary of that. It just introduces concept of cluster IP through gateway API. That's the thing. So we will have to come up with the next stage for that gap to say, okay, now we want to have this pod network aligned and approved and what's not. Now we want to have created another gap. Can we have a field for pod network in somewhere in those things when cluster IP is defined, right? So that's kind of the gist of the kind of how the stages should be done. All right. I think any other questions on this? All right. If not, then yeah, I will update the text of that. Let me stop share this. So at the top, we have this ongoing document for the design. I will update it because it's still using the old stuff. I'm going to modify it in such a way that it will represent all that. I will call out that what Masaharu sent out in the Slack channel, that you can have two types of this approach, where you can react on pod network only, or you can just react in terms of you add the device only when pod network is ready, or you can just add this attribute when the pod network shows up, and your DRA driver can list them right away. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some feedback from the Gateway API side, is that getting a little bit more context in terms of the long-term path of like what you're trying to enable with this functionality would definitely help Gateway API reviewers.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is where Puja, I hope, drives this in that way. If not, then probably have to chip in. But for now, everyone's, we opened Pandora box basically with all this. When you look at the comments over in that gap,
Yeah,
it's
that's kind of the worry, is that like, yeah, like a cluster like a replacement for service could do a heck of a lot of things.
yeah.
Like, what specific use cases are we trying to initially focus on and enable with this change? Would be really helpful for us.
Okay, and that's a fair point, because it is this. Because when you think about this, Puja has this big picture of a single service, an LB type service replaced with 9 objects or something like that, right? Which is crazy, right? Yeah, so who would use it? What's the point of using this, right? And there are 2 use cases. A, if I have a load balancer, I don't need node port, I don't need cluster IP. Why would I bother? I'm wasting IPs, I'm wasting ports on my node. In a scalable environment, this is a problem. So I just want to have a load balancer. And basically I can do with any other types, right? So I want to have only node port or only cluster IP. So that's the kind of one use case. And then the other use case is to allow multi-network, right? Where I want to kind of reference multi-network, but service is just the talk from what team was saying, that the service, everyone's adding stuff to service, so it's not manageable to add anything to service. So, and service is part of core, so that's why this is where the kind of eventual evolution would go to. Lionel, you have a hand.
Thanks. I wanted to give some more context about services, because I tried to create a cap more than a year ago, I think, to free the endpoint slice controller from the service, so we can select secondary IPs, and this was getting rejected. So the idea was to go through Gateway API, and then this gap was probably the way forward, because it allows to probably have more fields than the service. I will try to put the cap in the meeting notes.
All right, Gaurav.
So is the Gateway API gap, is that approved for provisional for 1.4 now, or is that still under discussion? And for 1.5, like, which implementations are we thinking would be implementing this? Do we have some of them onboarded, or is this like still happening? Is this discussion still happening?
Yeah, so I'll give context from Gateway API side. We're currently planning the scope for 1.4. There is no like explicit inclusion or approval by maintainers needed to get something to a provisional state. You can kind of like do that on your own, and if you're able to progress it, that's great. Where we start hitting those cliffs is getting things into experimental, requires like API review from Gateway API maintainers. So I started a Slack thread, I can tag you on it too, just in Gateway API, of kind of like getting this on the radar, because I know that most of the review you've had so far seems to have been focused on more SIG network maintainers rather than kind of our typical Gateway API maintainers folks.
As I said, it's open. It's like Pandora box.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
DNS, how the IPAM is
Yep.
gonna be done.
So yeah, just like getting this
like,
on the radar of us, like just so that we have a kind of a heads up of, hey, there's a group of folks that are trying to put an effort behind doing this for the next release for experimental. Is the early heads up there is going to be helpful.
All right. Any other comments on this? All right. So the last thing I want to call out, I think this is the next thing I called out, is Masaharu gave a really good example of very good real life use case for us multi-network use case kind of folks. You want to create a VLAN interface and create MAC VLANs on top of this, and that's a very well kind of common use case that you would want to do. And I was kind of thinking, how do we model this in the kind of world of the array with ordered resource slice? So that's what this item is Masahar gave an example, but I would like to leverage and I was thinking maybe we have some time so we can go over it. I read through the partitioning cap. I have not read yet fully through the capacity cap. The partitioning cap gives you the ability to okay, before I go there. So basically what I want to achieve here is let's walk through how that would look like, what the driver has to implement to build that use case, because I don't think we can do both, unfortunately, the way we think. And as I'm looking at the capacity cap, it requires additional selectors or how they call them, additional selectors, I would say, inside, or additional data inside the resource claim for the capacity pieces to work. So, which is a bit concerning, because our goal was to, okay, I want to have a pod network X, and the pod network does everything for me, but that apparently will not be sufficient, which is a problem, right? Because then we are saying, oh yeah, for those additional stuff, you will have to additionally say this additional thing, which is kind of troublesome because it breaks that kind of simplicity. Unless, of course, we have the class, and class kind of takes that in and covers that there, then that's kind of fine. So we have some sort of workaround, but it's still kind of troublesome. So that's my kind of goal here, to go leverage those two, look at the two caps, and model the stuff, what this kind of use case, right? And I wonder here, so maybe getting back to the use case. So we have our parent interface, let's call it that. This is our root for the whole thing, right? So the main interface via which I exit the node. And basically, let's assume this node has a trunk enabled, so it has n number of VLANs enabled on that interface, right? And then the first step for this whole thing would be, I need to create a VLAN interface, right? And this is the question here, because basically the pod is going to consume the MAC VLAN interface on top of the VLAN. So the first question is, are we assuming here that the VLAN interface is already created by us and that's listed out, or we are assuming the whole request, the whole resource claim defines in such a way that the driver will create both the VLAN if it doesn't exist, and then MAC VLAN, which I'm passing to the pod, or does the driver only handles the MAC VLAN, right? So only the last piece, and VLAN ID and VLAN itself is pre-created. All right. Any questions to what I'm trying to kind of explain? Let me maybe draw it, and maybe I can borrow from Masaharu's page. Let me see, where do I have it? Any questions to what I'm trying to achieve here? Will this be any? I think this is just, yeah, let me just maybe draw up the, do we have something here somewhere? Or maybe, you know what, let me go to this DRA. I think that's my, let's shift this tab. Let me just use this as my robo. So the use case is like this. So let me draw up a node. This is a node, right? Let's draw up and just ETH1 or 0 or 1, usually 1, right? And this should go up here. Then we have our pod inside, right? And then we are going to have two more boxes. So we have our VLAN, let's use 10 just for the easiness. And then we are going to have our All right, so that's kind of what we want to do, right? And let's maybe do a core coding as well, so we are easier to talk about things. I know red. Blue. All right, so what do we know? We know that the ETH1 is straightforward. We can kind of, it's always there, right? And we list it out. Now the question, is the VLAN interface auto-created by the driver, or is it pre-created by us? Based on, for example, and this can be kind of hint for, let me just copy this guy, right? I might have something like this, right? And this might be baked into my driver, so maybe that should be the solution, right? So let me do OPEX. So let's say my master will be ETH1 in this case, right? I hope this is not too small. So I have my master being ETH1. I will skip the IPAM because that's of less importance. But then I would say I want mode VLAN. Let's call it like that. Let's say I'm making things up here. It's not the importance of the structure, but I will say this, or maybe I would say it's a base mode is VLAN, and then I would say link mode is mag VLAN, right? So this is what I'm kind of defined as my possible options for pod network, for my implementation of the pod network, right? And I think from this point of view, what we can say that if I see such pod network, that means my driver can look at it and see, oh, you know what, you will expect to have a VLAN 10 interface. So what I'm going to do for you, and this has happened somewhere in the background because the DRA driver is basically your daemon, your agent on each node. It will create that piece right for us. Let me just maybe change this color. Just transparent and red. So basically, this piece. This piece is taken, and basically my driver understands that and creates this. You see my point here? So basically, because I created the pod network, only then the VLAN shows up in a specific way. So it's not being passed to any of the, and that might be a problem though, but get back there. This information is taken in, and my driver just without any pod creates the VLAN interface. I think this might be a problem because then you're locking out the ETH1 directly. And what I mean by locking out is there is an assumption in the partitioning mode that ETH1s, let's say, can have the partition, and the partition will be, let me just grab that as an example. Where do I had it? This is capacity. Where did I had that? Partition of the example. Let me show the example. Resource slice. Oh yeah, this. Here. So the example for the VLAN will be initially that. Right. This is a snippet from the cap for the partitioning. Let me maybe just where is the highlight here? And then the text color. Right. So we have our, say this will be our ETH1. It's not memory, it's VLANs, right? And this will say, so Sherber counters is basically the definition of what are the kind of counters there, right? And then VLANs, and then was it 4096, right? I think, right? This is the total number for ETH1 number of VLANs, or it can be something lower, but let's say this, right? And then we say you can have ETH1 as the whole interface, because that's what the partitioning does. It allows you to kind of switch between, do I want to use the whole ETH1 for something? Let's say I want to pass the whole ETH1 into the pod, or the ETH1 is treated as a parent for something, right? So that's what this is. But I think with this approach that I'm kind of drawing up here is kind of troublesome in terms of we lock ourselves out of the first kind of use case, right? So we are saying here that this is ETH1 capacity, and here we are saying we want to use the whole thing, right? Counter set name, how this is ETH1 to kind of say this is, and this is the whole thing, VLANs, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's correct. And then in the same thing, let me copy the other element, is when I want to use a partition. So what will be the partition that I will create and then list out here will be this, right? What happened? Oh my. Custom single. Okay, there you go. What's going to happen is now, oh, did I copy the wrong values? I did, sorry. Let me just try to capture the right thing. Devices name here, this piece. Yeah, I think I got it. So, but this one is just on the wrong. So this all here is here name. Capacity, and this is not memory, this is VLAN. And then I'm consuming just one, right? Because I'm gonna use just one VLAN, right? Capacity VLAN counters. This counter VLAN and that. You see this? Sorry, the picture is not big enough, but let me try to remedy this by shifting things around. You. So what we have is you can either pull the whole ETH1. In partitioning mode, you're saying that if you want to use the ETH1, you must have the full share, right? The 4096. If you don't have it, then you cannot, the ETH1 is not schedulable, kind of, right? So if I have, let's say this VLAN 10, right? So now, because if I were to create pod network, I'm going to create VLAN 1 interface that will use one stuff and one. But I think what this will be a problem with, because the VLAN 10 will not be used by any of the pods, so it will not be reserved, and that means I can still kind of the system will think ETH1 is still reservable because VLAN 10 is not used by anything. And then if I have the additional capacity cap that's kind of building to this, is to add that I can have n number of MacVLAN interfaces, right, on top of VLAN 10. And then I define that from that I reserve one or something, because depending on what amount I want to do. But this will be only on VLAN 10, and that will then lock VLAN 10 from being removed or what's not, but it will not lock ETH1 in this picture. Do you all see it, or I am rambling here? Anyone has a comments or questions? I think this is something that we would have to maybe, I'm not sure how we want to position the VLAN stuff right here, because VLAN 10 isn't really consumed by any resource or any pod, sorry, but it has to be kind of pulled into a reserved mode, right? Because I'm going to pull, so the chain has to be kind of maintained. That's what I'm getting at.
But the MacVLAN will consume VLAN 10, right?
Right, but it will lock only MacVLAN. Sorry, it will lock only the VLAN 10 interface, right? Because keep in mind, VLAN 10 will not be consumed by anything. So ETH1 will basically think, yeah, nobody's using my share, my 4096. So the scheduler will think if someone wants to pull the whole ETH1, they are free to do this. So that's the current problem, I think, with the current caps. We need to kind of maybe, the capacity cap, by the way, is something that is still in review. So we need to give feedback to this. Yes, Masaharu.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so the resource and the parent device ETH1 in the resource slice is not needed in the network interface case, I think. So because if there is the parent device is in the list in resource slices, so their driver can assign the whole device equal to parent device. Parent device can be assigned to the pod, I think. So devices list has only partition device equal to VLAN 10 in this figure. So
and I will show you this. Not exactly. So I copied the picture, because, for example, now, and I'm calling out like our own use cases that we do have, where another mode is, let's call it device, and just this. And what this means is I am going to do this. Basically, it's that mode, right? This is the mode that another type of my pod network, and with something that we have, one of the modes that we have, like this is a mode valid for virtual machines. Keep in mind, for bare metal, I agree that might be very strange to do something like this, but let me just maybe draw this up somehow better. But for virtual machines, this is what you would do, right? You would pass the whole interface into the pod, because it's a virtual machine. So SROV won't fly there. Even if you were to, and imagine ETH1 is your virtual function into the virtual machine, and then what you do, you just pass the whole virtual function into the pod. That's kind of the use case here. So in that yes. So in that point, what you're saying is my master is ETH1 and I want to link mode device. And the question here is, how do I ensure I can have those two modes available, right? I want to either create a VLAN on top of the ETH1 if that's the current need for my platform, or I want to have treat the whole thing as a whole interface, a device type, where I just pull it in as a whole to the pod, right? So that's why I am calling. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, that's fine. So that's why I'm calling this one out as well, because I would like to have that flexibility. And I think with current mode, I don't think it can be there. Any other comments from anyone? I think what we would need is ability to artificially reserve a thing. So basically, I need to say in the resource slice that, oh, you know what? I created this VLAN on top of one, and it is reserved. Oh, and no, step back. It will be reserved. It will say it's reserved when I create a Mac VLAN, right? Because then I haven't read through the capacity cap yet. Sorry, but what will be the example for the capacity? Let me see. Resource slice. Where is it? Attributes. Sharing policy. I think this is that. There is the sharing policy for capacity element. I think that's what it is. Let me see. So what I have capacity VLAN, and there is this. So I think it will be at this level. There is something called sharing policy. And I can state what is the minimum value and what is the chunk, right? So I think the chunk will be 1 and the minimum value will be 1, right? I think this will be the thing where if I were to create MacVLAN on top of this, I will reserve one capacity range out of this, or maybe this will be different. VLAN, maybe this has to be different capacity. I think this has to be called VLAN capacity, probably, not this. And the value will be. Let me copy this. So this probably will have to be like that. So I have this, the value, let's say, I don't know, 64K or something, the number of files I can open, right?
But the value is in the resource claim in that case. It's consumable capacity.
In the resource claim.
For the consumable capacity, you claim this value in the resource claim, not in the resource lines.
I see the example. I'm looking at the example for now. How the slice is defined, and I am on the side opening the. This is from resource slice. Let me share this stop. This is resource slice, and they say, okay, the basic must have the shareable true.
Right, yeah. Okay, this is the full value that is available. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And then yeah, I think this is what you're referring to, right? How much I want to reserve, right?
Right.
Out of this, right? So I will get to this. This is what I was referring, that there is another aspect to the capacity cap that requires us to put something into resource claim. So I will get to that, but for now I want to kind of define the claim itself, right? So I think this is the total, right? This is the total chunk size. I'm not sure. Minimum one meg. This is chunk size 8, and I assume I'm requesting 5. Okay, I think that's what. Okay, chunk size. So 5 gig, but chunk size 8. I think that's what it says. So let me get back to this guy. So basically, I say how many. Basically, this is MacVLAN is a file. So 64. I'm just saying, just from top of my head, 64K as a limit. My chunk size is 1 and the minimum is 1, right? And I think maximum should be 1 as well, right? I should not be able to reserve more than 1 at once, right? And minimum should be 1, right? Because I should not be. But keep in mind, this is not how many of those I can reserve is just when I reserve one, create a Mac VLAN, how much stuff I take out of this, right? So it's always up to one. You should not reserve more. Mac VLAN would not take more than one. Because it's some sort of, you can of course model it slightly different. It doesn't have to be, let's say, a file as a file representation. It can be modeled as a bandwidth representation, right? You have this much bandwidth, and basically each Mac VLAN can have this much bandwidth. So you can slice and dice, and you can limit it better. Yes, Machine.
Yeah, no, related question. So let's assume for any additional VLANs on that ETH1, will then the DRI driver have continuously, of course, this will, a new pod network or an extended one have to be defined. Will DRI driver have to continuously update the resource slice with those?
I think so. How would you because yeah, you tell me. I am rifting here myself, so I don't know, to be honest with you, because I'm not sure what other options there will be, because keep in mind VLAN 10 is never consumed by any of the pods. All right, and it's not something that if you were to create Mac VLAN on top of the ETH interface, that's straightforward, right? You just go with the capacity on top of ETH1 and you're done, and that's simple, right? But for this, you have this middleman that's basically is not consumed by anything, but you need it. And then the question is, because this is what I asked at the beginning, right? Do we represent it through the array, or we just hide it, and basically your driver just pre-creates this or something, deals with it in some ways? But then the problem lies in kind of sharing, and maybe that's the key, right? Maybe we don't have to represent VLAN 10. We just say that we are putting capacity on ETH1. The pod network gives you the configuration of the interface. So what's going to happen is you never represent VLAN 10. Maybe that's the solution as well. That's another approach. So let me show you what I mean. The other alternative is, let me put some titles here. Here, let me copy that. Show VLAN interface in the array. That will be this example. But now let's see in other approach, hide VLAN interface from. So in this case, what you do is you basically get rid of this guy. The VLAN stuff. Okay, so let's see what does that mean. So the VLAN stuff is going away. You don't care about that. The capacity becomes about Mac VLAN only, right? So this goes away. So you lose the kind of counter for how many VLANs you can create or what VLANs you have created. This has to be now baked into your driver, because what's going to happen is, let me see here. This is this is Mac VLAN that goes away. Consumer counters, that goes away right now. So basically you have ETH1 on top of which you kind of divide by memory or by bandwidth or what's that, right? And then whenever you create a Mac VLAN interface, your driver sees, oh, you want to Mac VLAN from ETH1. I see in my configuration you have VLAN ID. So let me just copy that guy. Do I have it somewhere? Okay, let me just copy this guy here. And then not discovery, piping. So this is the piping driver, right? Mode of this. What it's going to be, it's going to take the driver. And this is a problem because now it has to have all the config, right? You would have to have this VLAN ID config provided somewhere, so you don't have to query for it from the API. So that's something you have to. I don't think okay, that's not possible because you're losing that information, right? What I'm getting at is to get the VLAN ID, you would have to query the pod network, right? Because that information, unless such kind of information, can such information be somehow passed into the resource slice? Anyone? what I'm getting at is only the driver knows, based on this configuration VLAN ID and the base mode, it knows to create this piece. Okay, so that part doesn't exist because now I think what the path is only going through. So the DRA driver only knows about the VLAN aspect, right? The DRA only knows about the ETH1 and then the capacity, the MAC VLAN capacity, right? And the VLAN is hidden from the DRA, right? You only know about it, and you will create the DRA, the VLAN interface only when there is the first MAC VLAN pod, right? And then you know that, oh, there is another pod wants to connect to this. Let me check, do I have the VLAN interface created? Oh, I don't, then I create it. If I already have it, then I don't care about it, just create a MAC VLAN off of it and pass it to the pod, right? Keep in mind here in this picture, I am losing the counter for VLANs, right? It's only and maybe that's another solution. The problem here with this approach though is that you are, what happens here, you are missing the ability to DRA driver to be independent from API. This is something that I'm looking at as approach as well, because like the current Multus approach, for example, it always has to query the API for every pod creation, which it's a problem in a scalable, again, environment where you have multiple pods, or you care about how fast pod starts up. You don't want to have the CNI block every pod creation on API call. So you want to, and currently the DRI drive with all the pieces that it has, it's all kind of local, so you're kind of good. I wonder whether there is some data you can pass into. There can be some data, right, Lionel? Can you not pass this this information? No, you won't be able, right? Because it has to be in the resource claim. Resource claim will have only the, let me just draw this up.
Maciej, I didn't fully understand the part where you're saying DRA driver will not have to communicate with any API when it's allocating a pod. Is that actually right? Because in my
So that's the goal. I think today that's not achievable because, for
yes,
example, to report the state,
yes, exactly.
to report the state, the DRA plugin does have to call an API to update the resource claim, right? So that is the case. I agree with you, but
And not just to update the resource claim, we also don't actually get the entire spec of the resource claim. We actually have to, I think, fetch the resource claim itself as well.
I hope, really, I don't know.
I
saw
think
that
Kubelet doesn't tell us that this. I think the Kubelet just tells us the name of the resource claim, something like this, and then we have to kind of fetch the resource claim and then
parse that. Oh, okay, I didn't know that one. I haven't looked at the DRA net, so I think from what I saw, it's like, yeah, I got all this data from. Okay, if that's the case, then maybe it's not a problem. But keep
yes,
in mind
it's
that's
a problem. Yes, because
the question is that right? So this is that resource claim, because yeah, resource claims will not have the data of the pod network. It will have the class, or here you will have, what was this? We will have this one, right? We will have this selector. So we are going to have that guy here. Where was that? Request capacity, I think it's somewhere here, right? Let me just lower this. All right, yeah, something like that. So, and here you see we only have the pod network info from here, and based on that, the driver could know, okay, which pod network I am to grab. I think that one will still be defined through that still will be defined inside because of this standardization, right? So we will have this attribute. So you don't need it to grab it from the claim. You can grab it from here as well. And that's the problem. Okay, now I see the problem with this approach. The problem with this approach is I have no means to put, where do I put the pod? Name. Okay, pod network attribute. Okay, I see now. So that's not viable.
I didn't understand that part. Which Okay.
All right, let me show that. Capacity, and now if I have an attribute here, am I right level? No, I'm not here. This guy, too, here. So now we are past time, but I think we can continue this next week. So I will have this for my BlueNet, right? But now what if I have another pod network that says, oh, I'm running out of space here, and which says VLAN 20, right? Same parent, VLAN 20. I have no field to put this on. Okay, so that is a problem. So this option will not fly. Keep in mind that today there is no what I want to say. There is no list in attributes. There is no array type. It's only string, int, or some other. I think string and int only. So there is no array item. So unless we leverage the capacity in some ways, that the pod network.
Sorry, Maciej. Or please look at the. I will do some reading on the link that I shared, because they take in all the three caps, trying to understand how they should refine the attributes.
Okay.
To cater for capacity, partitioning, and attaching devices. But thanks for the info. I was just thinking the 4096 and how many VLANs one need to add to the
exactly.
resource.
That's exactly, and that's impossible, right, to do. So this has to be more dynamic, because that's why the partitioning approach is not fully valid for us. The problem with the capacity approach, on the other hand, it doesn't have a representation and a device item on top of which I can, because here, so this example is that, and basically this so that's important, right? This needs to be a list then. Highlight, right? So this needs to be a list, because that's a problem. I have another network, let's say red network, that uses VLAN 20, and I don't have a place to put it on, right? And on the other hand, in this previous example, I have VLAN 10 interface, which can then represent explicitly my network, right? Which is the good thing, right? So that's basically solves that problem, at least, right? With this approach here.
I think maybe I missed a part of the discussion, but I don't really understand what's the problem with this solution with the partitionable plus consumable capacity.
With the surfacing the VLAN or not surfacing?
No, the first one, the one that.
So here, how do I reserve ETH1 since VLAN 10 is never used? You will keep in mind, I'm going to create a MAC VLAN on top of the VLAN 10 interface. So yeah, I will keep a hold for this interface. That's fine. But that will not put a hold on ETH1. That's the problem. So what it means is maybe we need another cap that would say, I can artificially say I am reserving VLAN 10, but even if it's not used by any of the VLANs, and this is maintained by the driver, so that I can put a hold on ETH1. That's the problem with the current. That's the gap in the current with this approach, right? I can represent VLAN 10. I can put an attribute of the network to it, but I will put a hold on the VLAN 10 only. And through that, I do not put a hold on ETH1 because VLAN 10 is not consumed by anything. I think that's at least how I'm understanding this, but I might be wrong. So this is something that maybe a follow up with the DRA folks to see that maybe I'm wrong. And what if, because keep in mind, they are calling out the capacity on top of just normal interface. Now I'm mixing the partitioning with the capacity, and my problem is, can the capacity put a hold on my partitioned device?
But if you consume from the partitionable the full base device, then it should be fine, right? Like the partitionable device, VLAN 10, consume the full ETH1, so nobody is able to use.
No, but how? VLAN 10 is never used by anything. unless the capacity puts a hold on the partition. I need to read through the capacity. Maybe it does that. So that's my current gap, by the way. I need to read.
Okay. So I think it's more integration between these two caps than probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
All right, let's continue next week, and maybe I need to catch up on that capacity. And if anything, thanks Machine for that other doc. Let me read through that as well to see. Let maybe put it in the link in the no, not this one. Where is it?
Just a remark before we close, because next week is the on Tuesday it will be the end of the call for proposal for KubeCon North America.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Actually, I sent you a message because I think Peng is interested in this multi-network, and she's driving this consumable capacity. So if you are looking for people to collaborate on a talk about that, I think she would be interested.
So I have, okay, thanks for the heads up. I think I'm slightly changing my approach for that. And I had a topic here, share this up instead. So I want to kind of mention that next week as well. I was not ready for this week, so I want to kind of call this out next week on how, in general, in OSS, we want to position multi-network within the array, right? And I think this is what I think as a concept I want to push as the discussion around and a topic for the KubeCon. And why is that? Is because what we are doing here is not fully fleshed out yet and approved. So it might be tricky to go and talk about it. We probably will do it, and finger crossed we will by November, but today it's not, right? So it will be hard to get this talk approved. I think that's the problem. So what I want to, I think, position this as is to talk about where we are going to position. So more high level approach for multi-network, so that kind of people get the concept of positioning multi-network within the array. And I will talk about this more next week, so you can see. So I think I will reply to you to the chat. Thanks for I saw the message, Lionel, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, folks. And let's call it.
On Gateway API on Slack also, if anyone can jump in and help on answering their message, because they have some concern about Gateway API and multi-network, the thing that we discussed.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.